As the Civil War came to an end, people came to the realization of the real world. They were required to find jobs and companies to work for in order to make a living. The Industrial Revolution became a main factor into the available work for the citizens of cities. More and more factories needed work, but as the demand for workers increased, the conditions started to decrease. This caused what we now know as today the labor movement. This was the organization of a mass of workers who wished to forward their interests. It began in the mid-19th century and grew out of the need to protect the common interests of workers. The labor movement harbored a conception of the just society. This fostered social equality, celebrated honest labor, and relied on an independent citizenship. It also led efforts to stop child labor, give health benefits, and provide aid to workers who were injured or retired. What drove the labor movements were the organizations that had emerged. The organizations of skilled workers, also known as labor unions, formed around each trade and presented unified demands and collectively negotiated with employers. The labor unions fought for better wages, reasonable hours, and safer working conditions. Most labor unions saw this as a way to rise up two distinct classes, the rich and the poor. They developed to aim at the cooperate commonwealth rather than a higher wager, and appearing broadly to all producers rather than strictly to wage workers. Two of the most famous labor unions were the Knights of Labor and the National Labor Union. In 1869, the Knights of Labor were founded in Pennsylvania by U.S. Stevens and six other tailors. At first, the union was a secret society. It had the goal of promoting the organization of working people. Under the leadership of Terence V. Powderly, also known as the General Master Workman, the Knights of Labor emerged and became well known to the country. In a matter of just 5 years, the union was able to grow from about 10,000 workers to over 1 million. It was one of the few unions that represented all workers, men or women, white or black, citizen or immigrant, skilled or unskilled. This gave the workers a sense of unity and showed the power of organized labor. The Knights advocated boycotts to settle labor disputes, but did not agree on the issue of striking. Although the union as a whole say they did not support strikes, many members were prone to resort to them. Some outcomes were negative, as well as positive. A strike that the Knights of Labor were involved in was the Great Railroad Strike of 1877. By joining in this strike, the membership of the union expanded significantly. In the year 1877, the first general labor and railroad strike in United States history occurred. A major cause of this strike was the Panic of 1873, as well as the actions of the railroad industries. The Pennsylvania Railroad made two 10% cuts during the first half of 1877, and on July 13th, Baltimore and Ohio cut wages for the second time that year, as well as cutting the work week to 2 or 3 days. The Pennsylvania Railroad decided also in July to cut costs by doubling the length of freight trains without increasing the support crew. On July 17, 1877, the Baltimore and Ohio workers went on strike in Martinsburg, West Virginia. The workers blocked freight trains from moving and threatened to continue until pay cuts were reserved. The militia troops were called in, but were unsuccessful in convincing the striking workers to return to work and refused to use force to accomplish that goal. By this time, the strike had expanded and spread to Baltimore, where it soon evolved into a violent struggle between strikers and the state militia. In Philadelphia, a mob had attacked the militia and set fires that destroyed 39 buildings, 104 locomotives, 46 passenger cars, and more than 1,200 rail cars. In Pittsburgh, a strike began on July 21, 1877, and the local Pittsburgh militia was sent to protect the Pennsylvania Railroad's property. The strike spread wherever there were railroads and in many areas evolved into general labor strikes. In the beginning of 1886, the Knights had reached a height of 750,000 members and organized in more than 5,800 local assemblies. Yet, The Knights of Labor's image suffered with the event known as the Haymarket Affair. On May 4, 1886, labor radicals organized in Haymarket Square to protest the killing and wounding of several workers by the Chicago police the previous day. This was during a strike at the McCorkin Reaper Works. The police were then called in to break up the protests. When they arrived, someone threw a bomb, killing 7 police officers, a civilian, and injuring more than 70 people. The news spread nationwide and increasingly damaged the image of the growing labor movement. Their last resort was to try and change the union's image by using legislative pressure instead of strikes and boycotts to settle labor disputes. Legislators were not very cooperative.